Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Damon Raque, founder and managing partner of Bottle Bank. Please enjoy Damon Raque. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Damon Raque, founder and managing partner of Bottle Bank. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I'm excited to chat about creativity and how it shows up in your world, in the bottle business and the entertaining and experience world that you hold. But before we get there, let's hear a little bit from you about who you are and what it is you do.
Yeah, so we have a wine-centric hospitality concept here in Atlanta that we are launching. I was in financial services my entire career and was fortunate enough to have a very wonderful career with a great company, and was doing it for 15 years. And, if I'm being honest, was just kind of on cruise control at that point, and was a little restless and a little bored and a little stagnant. And like a lot of people, COVID comes along and the world changed a little bit. And the company I worked for had a, significant restructuring, and I ended up not having a seat at the table any longer. So like most things in life, you don't really understand perhaps at the time why it's happening, but looking back on it, at least in my experience, I'm always in a better place as a result of it. So, for me, again, I wasn't miserable by any means. I loved what I did and loved the company. They took great care of us, but I'd always felt like there was kind of more for me out there. And I think that whole COVID situation probably forced me to make a decision that I just really didn't have the courage to make myself, because I was just too comfortable. I always came back to the ends, justified the means, and I'm winning at the game of life. And, I'm on this path to success and independence, and, the hard lifting's done. So let's just put it on cruise control and ride off into the sunset. But so I decided to take some time off and kind of refocus and think about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And when I turned 40, I think like a lot of people just did some self-reflecting and thought about, kind of where I was and how I was doing, and just taking inventory of my life and, what I wanted to do for the second half. And, for me, the answer was remarkably simple. I wanted to drink great wine, and I wanted to eat great food, and I wanted to travel to amazing places. And I wanted to do all those things with people that I loved and cared about, who loved and cared about me. And the very best moments of my life were always centered around some combination of those things. So that's when I said, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up an environment where like-minded individuals can get together and, have those connective experiences where you sit around the table and you drink great wine and have great food and have great conversation and, create some memories. And so I thought that'd be a pretty fun way to spend the rest of my life. So that's what we're doing.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And to have the time and space, however unplanned it was, to figure that out, of putting those pieces together. Was it something that you talked to a lot of people about, of like, I love all these things and I want to figure out how to put them together? Or was it more of a solo, internal, like introspective time for you?
Yeah, I think the concept certainly evolved over the last couple of years. I had always loved wine and had been a wine collector for several years, and again, just really loved kind of the way of life that surrounds it, and just I'd always fell in love with the stories and the people and the romance. And as you know from your siblings living in Oregon, it's anybody who's in the wine industry is an interesting person. It's a hard business. But it's a business full of passion and commitment and sacrifice. And I've just always, loved that at its core. And it just creates this beautiful living, breathing product that kind of marks a moment in time. And again, it's very
Mm.
romantic, and it's just very intriguing. So I looked at different opportunities in the wine storage industry and some other aspects of the wine business, but I knew ultimately that, again, I'd always loved hospitality and just that connection that
Mhm.
industry provides. So it just seemed like a good marriage, so to speak. And so we've kind of been tweaking the concept, and yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been a lot of fun, and we're super excited.
Nice. I mean, as you were talking, what you said about the capturing a moment in time, I have interviewed several like elite event planners, and they too talk about capturing that moment in time. And I'm curious, how do you go about doing that? How do you set that up? You're creating an experience for someone for, is it like a special occasion, or do you have options for, it's like this is a special occasion, or this is just an everyday and I want to capture that in my everyday life, that moment of specialness.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it was important to us to having planned moments are wonderful, but
Yeah.
also providing an environment where those random, unexpected moments can be created naturally and organically. And I
Hmm.
think that's the real magic. So our facility, again, it's an ambitious project. It's big, and we've got several different moving parts. But one of the things we wanted to do was create a lounge where not a restaurant, not a wine bar, but
Hmm.
a lounge where people can think velvet couches and large
Hmm.
club chairs where you can sit down. And most hospitality concepts are trying to turn tables because they kind of need that volume, and we wanted to kind of do the exact opposite. Wanted to create an environment where people just want to sit and kind of hang out, and again take the time to have that conversation and that connectivity. So
Hmm.
there's opportunities for that. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have an optional membership program. So we're a semi-private club, and thinking about, again, you being a wine lover and being fortunate to experience a lot of different things wine
Hmm.
related. Wine dinners and private dining experiences centered around wine are just magnificent when done correctly. So we've got an executive chef on staff
Oh,
that you
wow.
can sit down, and so it's your 50th birthday, it's your anniversary, it's
Yeah.
our biannual girls' night out, and 8 of us are getting together, and we want to sit down with the chef and say, hey, these are the wines we want to drink, and we
Mhm.
want 4 courses, and we want a fish course and a steak course, and sit down with the somms and the chef and kind of create that customizable private dining experience. Again, if it's a occasion to celebrate, or if it's just something a little less formal, then I think there's the opportunity to do both. So
Yeah, I mean, I love the creativity that goes in both for the guest and your team, kind of, if
yeah,
they're coming and saying, this is what I want. And then the team has to kind of create that
absolutely.
experience or use their own creativity. I'm curious, when you think of creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
It's really interesting. Again, I'm really straddling two different worlds. My former life was Fortune 100 company, pretty well defined, and after doing it for 15 years, you kind of develop your routines and your habits, and you have your team in place, and everybody has their responsibilities, and it's rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And in starting Bottle Bank, what was amazing to me was there was a creative side to me that I don't think I was aware of,
Mhm.
that has been so fulfilling to tap into. I've
Mhm.
always loved architecture, and I've loved design. So working with the architects and internal design team, and picking out marble and stone and fabrics and molding, and looking at the layout and the design, and thinking about the menu, and thinking about the execution of the menu, and thinking
Mhm.
about seating, and this is different moments over here versus over here, and again all the experiential things we can kind of incorporate into Bottle Bank. It's really just unlimited opportunities for creativity, and that consulting to work with other creative individuals,
Mhm.
problem solving. And again, it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of tap into that and work with other creative people and feed off of that and vice versa. And it's really been inspirational for me personally. So I've been
Yeah.
loving it. It's really great.
That's amazing. I mean, it really sounds like stepping away from the rinse and repeat allowed you to find your creative voice and open up so many other doors than you had even imagined could open.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because creativity. Back to your question, I think can be defined in different ways. There's the sexy side of it, like
Sure.
let's design this beautiful space. Like that's fun and that's sexy. But as an entrepreneur, it's constantly problems and it's constantly you're getting pounded by things you don't expect. So you got to be creative in how you problem solve and how
Yeah.
you bring in resources and how you build a team and how you outsource and how you communicate and how you strategize. And there's an aspect of creativity to all of those things as well that aren't so sexy. It's something that almost comes out of necessity. So it's
Sure.
nice to have the ability to do the fun, beautiful stuff that's fulfilling, but it's also nice, if you're driven by that, to have the opportunity to think or be forced to think creatively to solve problems and kind of move the ball down the field. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, that balance of function and fun is what
Yeah,
I hear you
that's right.
talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
some days are more fun than others, believe me.
Sure. I
Yeah.
bet. Like anything. Absolutely. And I mean, starting something brand new, new ideas and concepts, I can only imagine how many challenges you have faced in
Yeah, it's been
navigating them. I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that you have felt the creativity has really helped solve those problems?
um I think problem solving and creativity, I think, are kind of go hand in hand. And so,
Hmm.
again, I've never thought I'd have to learn about grease traps. I never thought I'd have to learn about, options for structural reinforcement. I never thought I'd have to learn about liquor license laws. I never thought I'd have to learn about zoning laws. And so, again, the creativity comes where, man, we've got this problem, we've got to figure it out. So
Hmm.
you go into that mode where, okay, that problem solving mode forces me to think creatively and bring in resources that are more qualified and communicate, hey, here's the situation we're in and here's the
Hmm.
result that we need, and then communicating through that process creatively to figure out a solution, because a lot of these problems aren't just black and white, point A to point B. There's
Hmm.
different ways to do it, and some involve time, some involve costs, some don't work, some do. So there's, again, all these underlying factors that I think need to be balanced to decide what's the best way to move forward.
Yeah.
um that's a process.
It is a process. I'm hearing also that you have had to learn a lot pretty quickly. And so this like getting on to this creative space of gathering knowledge and information to then be able to participate in that, how do we get it from point A to point Z, or
Absolutely.
one, whatever that is. What's your relationship to learning? Have you always loved to learn, or is it like, learning wasn't really my thing, and now I'm looking at it through a different lens?
No, I would say I've always had an underlying curiosity,
Hmm.
that's kind of baked into my personality. I've always loved people who love things,
Hmm.
whatever that may be. I met somebody literally the other night at dinner who's a prolific, vinyl collector. So we're
Hmm.
talking about records and music, and he just goes into these, articulate conversations about, here's where I got this album and here's why I got it. And I remember my father, and just, again, these beautiful stories, but the guy's
Mm.
just so passionate. And it's just like, this is what this person does. And that could be cars or records or,
Yeah.
shoes or loving your sports team or loving wine or whatever it is, that passion that people put into things,
Hmm.
creatively. I've always just loved hearing about things that I'm not that familiar with. And again, people that really commit themselves to it in a very intimate way, I've always found just very admirable and
Yeah.
very intriguing. So, yeah.
Nice. Collectors.
Yeah,
That's a whole different world.
it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, what's your earliest memory of being creative?
That's a good question. I don't I don't really know. Um, I guess like most kids, I loved Legos and
Yeah.
you know Lincoln Logs and building things, and I had a sandbox because I love playing in the sand. I'd like to
Mm.
build these cities out of sand with walls and structures and run my
Mm-hmm.
cars through them. And I love to draw and have these design books and a bunch of markers, and I'd love to just meticulously color these beautiful colored patterns and stuff like that. And then my sister, her and I are very similar in a lot of ways, but very different as well. She was a theater major and was in musicals and sang, and I always admired that because I never did any of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always admired musicians that can play instruments and people that can act and sing and perform in any capacity. I think that's just such a wonderful gift. So I've never really felt like I've had that, and never really pursued that. So I've
Mm-hmm.
admired people that have, but I guess artistically, I took pottery classes in college and ceramics. So I've kind of always tinkered and had a little bit of that in me, but it was never really a focus. So I guess now that we're talking about it, I'm looking back. There's kind of those warning signs, so to speak, along the way. Like, maybe I'm a little more artistic. I should maybe learn to play the piano and do something meaningful with my life. So I don't know. This might be a moment of self discovery. So I'm gonna have to thank you for that.
I love participating in self-discovery. It's my
That's
favorite.
right.
And
But I thought this was a podcast, not therapy. Now
right?
the other
I
side of
know.
your the
That's
other
the
side
other
of your
half of
profession's
me.
coming out. That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm
But
gonna get
it's
a bill for this
yeah.
at the end, I think.
Nah, this is free. It's a free
Oh,
one.
you're so kind. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
But I'm hearing what you were talking about before of like the architecture being really curious and interesting, and then talking about the coloring books and architecture of like seeing this direct connection from childhood into adulthood, whether you were aware of it or not, hearing you talk about it, putting some pieces together. When you were a kid, was your creativity, whether it was in a form of art or sports or something, was that cultivated with your family, or was it kind of just something you did on your own?
I think my family they they dealt with it. I've always been very specific and very particular in what I like
Mhm.
and how I like to do things.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes to the point of obsession.
Mm-hmm.
So, my sister and my mother like to tease me that they think I'm slightly autistic. Like there's something not right about you, kid. So yeah, I've always been just again very structured and very disciplined and very
Mm-hmm.
systematic and what I do and how I do it. So I think that it's just always kind of
Yeah. But there's creativity in that. People
yeah,
say like having your routine is the way to stay consistent with your creativity. Of like,
yeah,
you don't know what will happen at 9 a.m. when you sit down to do something, but something creative will happen. Like,
yeah. No, like people that do things very consistently and very specific. There's a
hmm.
reason why they do that
Yeah.
typically, and that in and of itself is creative.
Hmm.
Like in their minds, they're thinking, all right, this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And creatively, I've thought about this, and this is why I do this. And
Mhm.
some people might think I'm crazy, but I think I'm brilliant.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with this, and it's fascinating to say, you know what? I would look at this fact pattern, and I
Hmm.
would choose this
Yeah.
as I process it creatively.
Hmm.
You look at the same fact pattern, process it creatively, and come up with a different process or outcome. And so, you know,
Yeah.
within that, I think lies creativity. So that's interesting.
Absolutely. And what did, Einstein owned the same suit in, 25 different of the same thing. So he didn't have to think about it because he'd
Right.
rather use his creativity elsewhere.
Yeah.
That was,
Great point. That's right.
I think how creativity shows up is unique and different for every one of us. And that is kind of the beauty of it. But you strike me as someone who gets inspiration from a lot of different places, but in your life today, who or what inspires you?
Um, Absolutely. I love being inspired. Again, I'm kind of in hyper, design mode these days as we finish the design development phase and move into the
Mm-hmm.
construction development phase. So um, I'm a big fan of Las Vegas.
Hmm.
I go out there several times. I don't gamble, but I love the magnitude and the scale of what Las Vegas has the ability to provide. In other words, you can go to Las Vegas because the projects are so massive
Mm-hmm.
that when you're building a $5 billion resort hotel,
Yeah.
you can spend $20 million on a restaurant. Whereas if I'm opening up a restaurant, I could never spend $20 million to build it because I couldn't
Mhm.
make the math work on the revenue side to justify the expense. But when again it's part of a integrated resort at 5 billion, $20 million is just a rounding error. So the
Mm-hmm.
scope and the scale and the
Hmm.
level of detail and luxury, if it's a spa or a pool or a restaurant or a lounge or a casino, that for me there's just so much inspiration because you can see and do things and experience things out there on a level that's pretty unusual other places. So to me, last couple of years, I've just been so inspired
Hmm.
looking at, and then the best chefs in the world are in Las Vegas. The best
Yeah.
design firms design for the best chefs out there. And so
Mm-hmm.
the best wines are out there and just the best of everything. So that's hugely inspirational in terms of trying to incorporate bits and pieces of that into
Yeah. I
so
love that. I love the inspiration from seeing others really take their vision or their dreams into reality. And
yeah.
that inspiration of, even though it sounds like yours is on a different scale, it's a similar process and experience of taking a dream and bringing it into the real world.
And it's interesting. There's a interior designer named Roger Thomas who is kind of retired now, but he's been a huge inspiration. He's done some fantastic projects all over the world. And
Hmm.
ironically, about him, Architectural Digest ranked him as one of the top 100 interior designers of all time, arguably the greatest hospitality
Hmm.
interior designer of all time. But he never studied interior design. He studied literature and art history. And
Amazing.
so looking at classic forms and the
Hmm.
masters and incorporating that into a different medium, I think is completely fascinating in terms of again kind of the theme being creativity. So and I think
Yeah.
people can kind of, to your point, gain inspiration from other areas and kind of
Hmm.
incorporate that into a different area, through their own lens and process. And the results sometimes can be pretty spectacular because the optics from where they're coming from, their perspective is much different than people that kind of go to that traditional
Yeah.
path, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I love it. And you know, it strikes me as finding creative moments in whatever it is you're doing is possible, or the creative translation of something. I think I'm hearing you say with never, this interior designer, never studying interior design, but having a prolific interior design career
Yeah.
because of that translation that he was able to make for people who struggle with their own creativity or experiencing creativity in their life. How would you encourage them to find creative moments or their creative voice?
I would encourage people to slow down and pay attention. I think would be my answer.
Mm,
I think there's beauty in so many places if you take the time to
yeah,
just absorb it. And I think in today's world, all of us we're so busy
yeah.
and we're running so hard and we're getting bombarded
Mm,
with our laptops and our iPads and God knows our cell phones and text
hmm.
messages and phone calls and we're late for this and we're in the car and we're listening to music and we're talking on the phone and it's just like you know take a moment to look at a sunset and look at the
Mm,
colors in the sky and say what, God, that third shade of orange would just look unbelievable in that light fixture above the
mm,
table in tasting room number 4 or that painting behind you with the it's a beautiful blue next to that. I love the contrast between the pink and the blue and the flamingo. Like I love that pink blue contrast. That would be awesome if we did that on a set of flatware or something for one of our tastings. There's so many. If it's listening to a piece of music or going to a museum and just looking at something that was painted, looking at the form and the structure and the colors and just all that stuff. I think if you slow down and just appreciate, other individuals, I think are great sources of inspiration. Nobody really takes time to just talk and connect, and that's one of the things I love about wine, to kind of bring it full circle. Is it's such a connective thing where it forces you to kind of slow down and have that conversation and connect with people and get their opinions and listen to their perspectives, and within that is creativity and inspiration. And so I think just kind of slowing down and being in the moment, I think people would be surprised in what they can get out of that. That'd be my advice.
I love it. That reminder to slow down. How do you remind yourself to slow down?
I think I've just always kind of done that. I always joke. I think I'm inherently lazy. So for me,
and maybe inherently mindful. Let's shift the negative.
Yeah, I always joke like, these people that say, oh, if I won the lottery, I'd have to keep working or I'd get bored. I'd be like, man, you're out of your mind. I'd have no issue whatsoever. I could fill my days with being curious and just wanting to work at a bookstore or go work at Waffle House, learn how to be a short order cook, or work at the movie theater and get free movies. I mean, man, I'd have no problem slowing down and being in the moment. I'm lazy and no problems at all for me. Not an issue.
I love it. That's amazing. Well, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I just have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Like in my body to be creative. I think I don't know. I think it feels let me ask you the same question and let me hear your answer, and maybe that will make me think of something. How about that? Can I turn the tables on our
Sure, absolutely. For me, it feels expansive. It feels life, like there's life flow when I experience creativity. There's so much joy, there's happiness, I feel like a little kid, like a young, just no cares, can express myself and be my true self, doing whatever it is I want to do. So that's what creativity feels like in my body.
No, I think that's incredibly well said. I think I would echo that. I think I find inspiration in creativity. I find that whimsical childhood kind of fantasy purity maybe is a good word. I can absolutely get on board with that. I think that's well said.
I love it.
Clearly, you thought about that better than I have. So
that's okay. I've had a little more time to think about the question. But if people want to learn more about the things that you have going on, your bottle bank, how could they go about doing that?
Bottlebank.com. It's got all the fun stuff online, and Bottlebank ATL on Instagram if you're into social media.
Awesome.
So,
I'll put those links in show notes so people have easy access. And thank you so much, Damon, for taking the time to chat with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise, it's been an absolute pleasure. I sincerely appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.